Bill O'Reilly is going to plead to the black community here to consider Donald Trump for president.
Donald Trump goes back to his populist approach, and that is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. In a speech last night outside of Milwaukee, the candidate spoke forcefully about the problems facing America. Trying to broaden his appeal, Mr. Trump directed some of his remarks at African Americans.
I'm asking for the vote of every African American citizen struggling in our country today who wants a different and much better future. It's time for our society to address some honest and very, very difficult truths. The Democratic Party has failed and betrayed the African American community.
Mr. Trump pointing to the median household income for blacks falling during President Obama's tenure. Black home ownership also fallen. And the black poverty rate has risen slightly. As far as crime is concerned, blacks make up 13% of the population, but 38% of all violent crime arrests are African American individuals. In education, blacks have the highest high school dropout rate among ethnic groups and score lowest among American groups in math and writing on the SATs. So it would seem that Donald Trump is a point. The stats say that under a progressive Democratic president, black Americans are less well off than they were under President Bush the Younger. Now, it would be hard to believe that black Americans would rally behind Donald Trump because he has been successfully demonized in many African American precincts. Also, Trump's style doesn't seem to appeal to minority voters in general. I don't think there's any question about that. But on the issues, it is clear that liberal policies have not really helped the African American community lately.
What liberal policies, Bill? Which liberal policies? The non-existent ones that we're currently trying? Come on, his ignorance of basic policy stuff is overwhelming. So here's why black people support Democrats in much higher numbers. Democrats, many, many, many more of them, support things like unionization, which helps raise wages. Raising the minimum wage, which, again, by definition, helps raise wages. Democrats are much more likely to support health care reform. We know the Republican position on that. Affordable college initiatives are across the board pushed by Democrats. Ending the drug war. The conversation about that is happening between a bunch of Democrats and Rand Paul. Thank you, Rand Paul, for being the only sane Republican on the fucking planet in Washington. When you talk about reforming policing, hey, let's have mandatory body cameras on all the different police. Let's retrain the police and do stuff like that. The Democrats are having that conversation. So, in other words, the African-American community looks at the Democrats and they go, oh, on policy substance, they are much more likely to be in alignment with my values, which is why, literally, 99% of them are choosing Democrats over Republicans. But no, see, Bill knows better than you. Oh, he knows what's better for you than you do. He even goes on to say there's a segment that he does, which is an interview or a discussion that continues on off of this. And at one point, he tells, a black guy that he has on the show, well, I think what we should try and what would work is if we try supply-side economics. That'll really help black people. Oh, my God. He's so historically ignorant, it hurts. Every single time we've tried trickle-down economics, which is just another way of discussing supply-side, or you call it Reaganomics, or voodoo economics, as H.W. Bush used to call it, what happened? Boom, bust cycles. So you deregulate, you cut taxes for the rich, and then we have fake growth, and then the bubble goes pop, and everything tanks, and everybody's worse off. So it was trickle down, which gave us the Great Depression and the Great Recession. And then I love the fucking trick that he uses when he says, blacks were better under George W. Bush. Excuse you? So this is Jeb Bush's trick, too. Jeb Bush did this in Florida during the campaign when he was running for president. He said, I had such great job growth in Florida, so you guys should vote for me because I'm obviously good with the economy. What's he leaving out? When he left office, it was the peak of the bubble. Then the bubble burst, and then everybody was worse off in Florida. So he, just like his brother, let's do trickle down, let's deregulate, let's cut taxes for the rich, cut social services, housing boom. Everybody's like, oh, we're doing so great in Florida, and then pop, everything goes to shit. But he takes credit at the peak of the bubble and doesn't realize that it's his policies which led to the bubble in the first place, which led to everybody being more fucked up later when we had the crash. Florida got hit one of the hardest. So their policies were responsible for the bad things, but they take credit when it's at the peak of the bubble and it's fake growth, and they go, see, it was good at that specific point in time, therefore I get all the credit and none of the blame. Same thing with George W. Bush. The only way you can say that black people were doing better or anybody was doing better under George W. Bush is if you stop your analysis in 2006 at the peak of the fucking bubble and pretend it's real and consistent. If you look at the total picture and you look at fucking 08 when we're bleeding 800,000 jobs a month, obviously everybody's better off under Obama's administration because we've actually had a recovery. He's the one that tanked it with his shitty policies along with the help of Bill Clinton and Bill Clinton's shitty right-wing policies like deregulation, like Gramm-Leach-Bliley, which repealed Glass-Steagall, like NAFTA, the list goes on and on. But final point here, let me say real quick. Bill, Republicans run the Southern strategy, you jackass. The whole point of the Republican Party post the mid-1960s and the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act is, okay, well, now we're going to go in a different direction and we're going to try to court Southern racists to get into power that way. That's the whole point. It's not up in the air. It's not like, well, that's some people's take on it. It's a historical fact. Republicans have acknowledged it. Heads of the RNC have acknowledged it. You know, Pat Buchanan admitted, like, yeah, we had a good run with the Southern strategy. Excuse me. He thinks at this point, well, maybe it's not enough votes to win, or maybe it is, because they're still fighting for it with Trump, is like the last throes of that. But there's no denying that they did it. So when the whole point of the party was to court Southern white racists, to berate black people for not wanting to be in bed with Southern white racists is probably the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. And then, finally, it was not that long ago, just a few months ago, Donald Trump was retweeting white supremacists multiple times. You know what happens when you retweet somebody multiple times? You kind of agree with their points. You kind of agree with their sentiments. If he's retweeting white supremacists, what does that say about him? Now, I'm not saying he's as bad as neo-Nazis or the KKK. He's obviously not that extreme. Those guys are terrorists. But is he a bigot? Is he a xenophobe? Is he a racist? Don't be silly. I mean, the guy says we got to ban all Muslims from entering the U.S. That's bigotry. The guy says we got to deport 11 million undocumented immigrants, and he's talking about dudes named Jose. So, yeah, the dude's a fucking bigot. Yeah, he is. Yeah, he retweeted white supremacists. You're really going to berate black people for not voting for a guy who's kind of cozy with white supremacists? It's like you're being purposefully dense, Bill. I don't know whether this is all an act, or I don't know whether you're sincere and you mean it, but you're just really goofy and not that bright. You tell me.